Republicans are hoping to increase their numbers in the state legislature after the November election. Tonight on Insights on PBS Hawaii, we'll explore two of the most competitive legislative races. Will voters return a longtime Republican senator to the East Oahu seat he gave up? And can a young leader in the state GOP overcome a veteran Democrat in Central Oahu? Now live in our studio, our host, Dan Boylan.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Dan Boylan. Hawaii's general election is 6 weeks away. Between now and November 6th, we'll be featuring a variety of local, state, and national races. Unlike the campaign ads and debates, we offer a chance to see how candidates conduct themselves and what they say in an unscripted, unstructured conversation. Tonight, we look at two legislative contests in which the minority Republican Party hopes to increase its numbers. First up, Fred Hemmings' run to recapture the East Oahu Senate seat he held as recently as 2 years ago. His Democratic opponent, Laura Thielen, faced opposition in the primary not only from other candidates, but from her own party. During the second half of our program, longtime Democratic lawmaker Marilyn Lee faces a challenge in her Mililani district from Republican Beth Fukumoto. We hope you will join this discussion by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments for the candidates. The contact information you now see on your screen will be repeated throughout the program. If you have a question for the first pair of candidates, please call as early in the hour as possible. And also a reminder that Insights is live on both your television and computer screens. It's streaming now on our website at pbshawaii.org. This program will also be posted online after the broadcast. Now let's welcome the candidates for Senate District 25, which wraps around East Oahu from Hawai'i to Kailua. There's no incumbent in this race, but Fred Hemmings represented the district for a decade, from 2000 to 2010, and served as Senate Republican leader. Fred was one of just two Republicans in the state Senate, and after he decided to retire 2 years ago, his seat fell into Democratic hands, leaving a lone Republican in the Senate. Fred earlier served in the State House from 1984 to 1990. Was that the year you ran for governor?
Yes, that's correct.
That was it. Prior to entering politics, Fred was well known as a competitive surfer. Democrat Laura Thielen was a member of Governor Linda Lingle's cabinet, serving as chair of the Department of Land and Natural Resources and director of the State Office of Planning. She is an attorney and has worked both in private practice and for the Legal Aid Society. She and her husband also run a farm in Waimanalo. I think I first met both of you in conversations about schools. And schools represent a very big part. Education represents a very big part of what the state does. And there's not a school in town, I think, that doesn't feel that they're too crowded or that they don't have sufficient resources. As state senators, where would you go with some of the ideas that you've had about public education? Laura, I know you...
Well, actually, I first got into politics when I was sitting at home one night by myself. My husband was on a business trip, and I read that the Windward District representative for the school board was retiring at the end of his term. And I thought, I have kids in public school. I'm not happy with the quality of the public education and student achievement in Hawaii, and maybe I'll run. And so I ran and got on the school board, and that was my first look into kind of an established systems in Hawaii, trying to change them, which is a real uphill battle. And that was when I first met Governor Lingle, was because after beating my head against a brick wall for about a year on the school board and trying to get change happen, I was approached by Randy Roth, who asked me if I'd work with them on education, and I agreed to. We've brought forward a lot of great ideas from people in Hawaii, as well as people in public school districts around the nation. And I think some of those have been adopted by the legislature, by the school board now, but there's many more that can be adopted, and a lot of it means that you need to put more of the resources and the control down at the school level, the dollars into the classrooms, because that's where the students are. And a lot of it is around the teacher training and the principal training, because those are the people that interact with the students day after day, and that's where we're going to get success.
Fred, you've had 16 years in the legislature to deal with public education. What would you do now that you weren't able to do before?
Well, you could have asked the question about public education 30 years ago and got the same answer. There has been no systemic reform. Currently, we have approximately 180,000 kids in public education. The budget has exploded to $2.4 billion, the single biggest expenditure. Our scores, as a matter of fact, are stagnant at best. They ebb and flow. They get a little better, they get a little worse, but there's been no systemic change. Too much money is going to the bureaucracy. We're bureaucratically top-heavy. Of the 20,000 or so public employees involved in public education, only 9,000 are teachers in the classroom. The rest is being consumed in other areas. Granted, some of it's needed, like food service and janitorial service and things like that. But the Catholic Church, for instance, runs 32 schools. They have no Department of Education. Charter schools run very well. They're also very slighted because if you average $12,500 for kids system-wide in the public education system, the legislature only gives chartered schools, the last I checked, $5,800. So you really need systemic reform, and tinkering with it around the edges is not going to do it. I almost cry when I look back at the Reinventing Education of 2004, which was a rebuttal to Governor Lingle's initiatives. The only thing that changed is they threw $700 million more at the budget, and we still don't have the education our children and the teachers deserve.
What is the difference between you and public education? I mean, do you feel, you're saying that it should go, that more of the power should go down to the local level? That essentially is your argument, right?
Yeah, I still support decentralizing the school system. I think too much control is in Honolulu. You need to have control down at the local level. Schools that have control over their budgets put more of the resources into the classroom.
And you would argue that the problem is they're overladen with bureaucracy.
No, I wouldn't argue that at all. I would argue the problem is political. You have a political dynasty that has gotten its power from status quo, and they're unwilling to change it. And that's why I wish my opponent would join me as a Republican so he could make some changes. Until that happens here in Hawaii, we're going to continue to get what we've got.
Let's go to that. You won this race, this three-person Democratic primary, but without the support necessarily, with this ambivalent support from the from the Democratic Party. Has that been worked out?
It's been worked out. What happened was the majority, I think, of the Democratic Party members felt that I did have the right to run as a member of the Democratic Party, and that people who live in the district should have the right to vote to choose who represents them. Unfortunately, it wasn't a decision made by the majority of the party members. It was a central committee, and it was a divided decision. But the committee said, no, we don't want you to run. And I challenged that because I felt legally people do have the right to vote for who represents them. Now that I've gone and won the primary by a fairly large margin, most of the party has rallied around behind me. I have the support of the local representatives. I have the support of many of the Central Committee members who had supported me all along. And I think they feel I'm their candidate. They recognize that neither party speaks with one voice. There are a lot of individuals and a lot of spectrums of opinion within any political party, but I very much am aligned with the party platform along the environmental and land use issues.
But doesn't the voter face a little bit of confusion? I mean, when you and I were talking back in the beginning of the last decade about education, I never knew you were a Democrat, and your last name is Thielen, and there's a lady over there on the windward side who's been a Republican representative forever over there.
That lady had 4 children, and 3 of us are Democrats. I've never kept it a secret that I'm a Democrat, and frequently when I was working in the legislators, most of them knew I was a Democrat all along.
I seldom ask. I guess that's my problem. Yeah. Why? But I have a question for you. You were in office, was one of only 2 at the time, I think, or 3, and you decided to retire just 2 years ago. Shouldn't the voters say, well, why did you go away 2 years ago? Why do you want to come back now?
They do say it. And, I've never been a career politician, Dan, and I had some personal matters I was dealing with. I was building a house and moving in next to my kids and my grandkids, and I thought I'd served my time in the legislature. I'm coming back for one very specific reason. frustration. I think Hawaii deserves better. We have one of the highest taxed working people in the nation. We have regressive tax. We tax people for being sick and hungry. Public education is stagnated as it was 30 years ago. You could have asked the question 30 years ago and gotten the same answers from the people in power. So Hawaii definitely needs, and the most thing is we need a two-party system. We need checks and balances.
Yeah, but you were saying all those things for 16 years too, and
yes.
some voters going to say, darn it, Fred, you're just being fickle. You went away for a couple of years, now you're coming back.
They can say what they want. I'm sincere. It's not easy being a Republican, Dan. I've suffered a lot. Dan, let me share this story with you. I blew the whistle on judiciary corruption when I was in the House of Representatives. I got death threats, Dan. I got a license from Chief Gibb to carry a gun to protect myself.
Was this the Fat Boy Okuda?
Yes, it was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got, and I didn't want to end up like Larry Kuriyama shot. It has been a difficult task being the loyal opposition. The worst thing, Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to James Madison about the Bill of Rights, and he wanted to keep monopolies as something that government should have a watch over in the Bill of Rights. And it didn't happen because of intellectual properties. But the point is, monopolies are bad because they generate absolute power and absolute corruption that goes along with it. And myself and Sam Sloan and other brave Republicans have chosen a difficult path.
Just what I was saying. Pete from Kailua says to Fred Hemmings, why did you retire your seat and then decide to run for it again? I'm confused. We just answered. Laura, I don't understand this very well, but I understand that the governor was yelled down over on Kauai, I guess it was, over this. Regarding Act 55, Public Land Development Corporation, what is your opinion, and would you support a repeal of this act?
I absolutely support a repeal of Act 55. I'm running for one simple reason. After I left DLNR, I spent about 10 months on our farm building that. And when I came back to work, I saw what the legislature had been doing. They were passing laws and trying to pass more laws that would bypass the land use and zoning protections that have been put into place for 30 years to protect Hawaii's agricultural lands, to protect our natural resources, and protect our communities. And I felt that that was absolutely wrong. I fought against Senate Bill 2927 and helped get that defeated in the last session, and I've started organizing people around trying to get a repeal of Act 55. Act 55, not only does it give the state the superpowers to bypass any land use and any zoning laws and build development wherever it wants, a hotel in the preservation district or golf courses on agricultural lands. But when you read the act, it's actually worse than that. The purpose of the Public Land Development Corporation is to, quote, exploit national and international tourism markets and develop tourism destination resorts, hotels, timeshares, and leisure-related activities. So what the state has done with Act 55 as a statute is it said we're going to develop revenue by going into the tourism business using state land and state resources. Now, if that's the case, I think we need to have an honest conversation about whether that's the future we want for our state. I know the proponents now are saying, oh no, this act is about building, modernizing schools and long-term care facilities. Those facilities are never mentioned one single time in Act 55. And if the proponents are changing their mind about the purpose of the act, then they need to amend it to change that purpose.
Fred, your thoughts on this act?
No, Act 55 is what everybody says it is. It's an abomination. It circumvents the public's right to input. But I'll go one step further. We have to really stabilize the growth of the tourist industry because too many tourists, and we're reaching the point of diminishing returns. In our district, my district, tourism's destroying the residential neighborhood. It's driving up land prices. It's keeping people off our beaches. We've had tremendous problems with the touritization, if I can use that word, I'll make up, of Kailua. So we really have to look at, it's a good word, touritization.
Let's have it.
But the point is that we have to create a fertile economic environment so other businesses, right now people don't come to Hawaii. We got Forbes magazine rates us, I think, 47th or 48th for business environment in the nation.
49th, I think,
49th.
Jim in Honolulu.
There. So my point is that's what we have to work on so we diversify our economy. More investment in tourism is eventually going to hurt us because we're a single industry. You know what the second biggest industry in Hawaii is? Biggest revenue generator?
No.
Dan Inouye.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
And God bless Dan Inouye, boy, I'll tell you, military spending and his efforts on our behalf have been heroic. But
what else would you do? I mean, look, You know, we're old timers. I've been at this table so long, I think I'm going to give out before the table. Well, I know I'll give out before the table does. But we've been hearing this forever, that we don't have enough diversity in our economy. What are you going to do? What should we do? As a legislator, what would you do?
Okay, here's the formula.
You get it first. Okay. You take it too.
Here's the formula we've been using for too long, is to pick out favored industries and give them tax incentives. While businesses might enjoy tax incentive for the short term, over the long term, we live in what Forbes magazine calls a business hell. So what you have to do is what has not been done for 20 or 30 years. You have to make this a more fertile environment by reducing taxes, by allowing businesses to come here and prosper and grow, and by making it affordable to do business, just like making it affordable to live in Hawaii. We have a punitive economy that penalizes profit and productivity.
How do we build jobs? How do we improve the economy?
Well, I agree with Fred that we give lip service to diversification of the economy, but I don't agree with him that just reducing taxes on businesses is the way to go. I think what we do need to make is this a friendlier business environment. A lot of times our tax code favors certain types of businesses over other types of businesses, and I think what we need to do is level the playing field. We favor large, vertically integrated businesses, monopolies, and things like that, and we make it hard on the small businesses. And so we need to make it fairer, because small business is where most of our new jobs are and where most of the growing of the economy happens. I think the other thing we need to do is take a look at the University of Hawaii. Universities across the nation, what they're doing is they're producing more on the humanities and less on the type of careers and education that we need for our economy. And we need to get more of our youth through all 4 years of college, because really, you have a lot of people going into college where they don't graduate, and what happens then is, your economy isn't as robust as it could be, because there's a direct relationship between the number of college graduates and how well a diversified economy is going to be.
I'm going to ask the same question, but a different side. Why, when there are 24 Democrats and 1 Republican, is 1 more Republican going to make any difference? And why in anybody's name does a 24-member Democratic Senate need 24 if you want Democrats to control?
I guess the way I'd answer that, Dan, is I don't think the party matters. Neither party has a monopoly on virtue, and they both have their own problems. And the rhetoric of parties doesn't matter. What people really want now is a candidate who's going to be able to go in there and be effective and make things happen. I think the real question to be asking Fred is, if he was going to be able to make all these changes happen, why didn't they happen the 10 years he was in there? And they didn't. So the question facing the people in our district is, do you want change? Which one of us do you think is going to be more effective at making that change happen?
Why do we need another, aside from Sam Sloan running around that Senate all the time, all by himself?
Well, first of all, to avoid a political monopoly, I'm very proud of my tenure. I got more done in the Senate than most Democrats. I was responsible for the inception of the world's largest marine sanctuary. I'm a conservationist, some would call me an environmentalist. I've done more to protect the environment. I have also held the majority party, and this is a function that my opponent doesn't understand, why you need a two-party system. Sam and I worked together to blow the whistle on ill-conceived notions, bad spending. We literally stopped bad legislation. A lot of the problems in Hawaii are not what is not happening, it's what is happening by virtue of a one-party system. We don't need a political monopoly. We need the checks and balances of a two-party system, and I represent that check and balance.
Fred,
I'm going to go back though. Again, I don't think it's a party that means that you're going to be a check and balance or that you're going to be effective. It's challenging the bad ideas. And I've been very able to do that in education reform, as well as in the land use, in stopping Senate Bill 2927, and as well as the Public Land Development Corporation.
Let me have on that. She was in the Department of Education. I mean, she was on the Education Board. Nothing changed. What she doesn't know, which I do know because of my experience in the Senate, is when you become part of the majority party, you either play ball or you don't play. And I've heard for years Democrats with wide eyes saying, I'm going to change the system. And they get in it and they get sucked right up in it. And I'll ask you, what has changed? You yourself have had interviewed people say, well, I'm independent and I'm not going to kowtow to the system.
I'm asking the questions around here, Hemmings, not you. So you just take it.
I don't want your job.
Just get back. Fred, somebody's saying when Hemmings was last in, he ignored the Hawaii Kai portion of his district. How will both of you serve Hawaii Kai if elected? Did you not pay attention to Hawaii Kai?
I sure did pay attention to Hawaii Kai, and I paid attention to the whole district and also many of the needs of the entire state. Hawaii Kai is Portlock and Cocoa Terrace and a little bit of Queensgate, capital improvement benefits. Saving Kaiwi Park was a big effort on my part. I worked with Representative Gene Ward in getting funding for that and making sure that I worked with Elizabeth Riley and others for conservation efforts out there. So I was very active in helping Hawaii Kai, as I did with my entire district, as I do with the state.
How would you, to what would you give attention in Hawaii Kai? How would you represent?
Well, first off, let me say I think it is tough for people in Hawaii Kai because they don't have somebody who's around their bend of the island. And the first time when the Reapportionment Commission remapped the district, they did actually end the Senate District 25 at Waimanalo, and Hawaii Kai was going to be part of that other district. And so it was kind of unfortunate for them that it ended up, with a second set of maps. I think there's a requirement for the senator to be in Hawaii Kai, to understand that community as well as they understand the community that they live in. I'm right around the corner in Waimanalo. As DLNR chair, I was very familiar with Kaiwi. Was very familiar with the legacy land. I'm sorry, I'm missing the name of the Heiau and the other acquisition that we put in place there, and have gone out to help with some of the cleanups and would continue to do that participation in that community. And a lot of it is just being there.
This is Philip from Honolulu for you, Laura. Don't you think that in a state in which diverse voices are so important that there should be more Republicans in the state Senate?
I think there needs to be more diverse voices and more effective voices in the Senate. People who come on in to do the job, who are prepared, who are there to late at night, the ends of the hearings, that they're in the meetings where the final decisions are made, and to carry that independent voice of the community and not to do what the party bosses tell them to do, regardless of what the party is.
Let me say something. I'm not taking, believe me, I just want to say something though. I remember when you were here during the primary, as you are tonight, you're quite critical of the way the legislature have acted and on environmental issues and other things. But I got to say something. When you're that critical of the majority that you're going to join, what's the addition? Now, I don't mean to say that this guy's any great addition. All I'm going to say is that I know that he was always very well liked by the opposition as a guy, as a fellow who got along, was willing to get along with them and treat each other civilly and so forth. Isn't there a danger in being a voice that is constantly?
Well, keep in mind, in the House, you do actually have a number of people labeled as the dissidents, but there are a group of people that are contesting what the majority voice is saying there, and that's all within the same Democratic Party. On the Senate side, my goal would be to be bringing forward more of those voices and to start to have more open and honest discussion on the issues and the challenges facing our state. I think maybe one of the reasons that they felt okay about Fred is they could still go in and have their caucus and they wouldn't be bothered by him. Having me in there as an independent voice, I'm going to be there the entire time and be bringing forward that discussion at every level at the Senate debates.
That's not how the system works, Dan. When you join the majority party, you either play ball or you don't play. And you've seen it year in and year out since many decades have gone by. The Democrats, and you talked earlier about the reason why the Democrats, I can work with them is because they trust me. I have been a loyal member of the Republican Party and held to my virtues and my values, and I've not compromised it. Unlike Laura, who donated to Republicans and supported their candidacies against Democrats. The Democrats' problem is they don't trust her. And they do trust me, and trust is probably one of the most important elements in any human relationship.
How did you get along with the legislature when you were as a director?
I was one of the only directors that got my bills passed. I think the time that I was DLNR chair, I had more bills passed than Fred Hemmings did as a senator. We were able to raise the fines for environmental violations for the first time in decades. We were able to get the Bureau of Conveyances put online. I had a great relationship with them, especially on the House side, and with a number of the senators as well.
That's what's called a softball question on my part. Yeah, but that's okay.
It's not entirely correct, too. What's really interesting is this Public Land Development Corporation, as director of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, she proposed a recreational renaissance, which was shot down very solidly by Senator Clayton He and the Land and Natural Resource Committee. That bill, according to senior staff members of the Lingle administration, would have created exactly what the Public Land Development Authority.
Nothing like the public land
decisions would have been made regarding parklands and public lands in the DLNR, not in the public sphere.
No, it had nothing to do with the Public Land Development Corporation. That was fixing up park bathrooms and boat ramps. Every building would follow the building permits, the zoning laws, the land use laws. There was no direct deals or backroom direct negotiations. There was nothing that's in the problem with the Public Land Development Corporation that was in our proposal.
Yeah, it was privatization of parklands, and Clayton He shot it down in committee for that reason.
Despite your disagreements, Dorothy from Aina said Fred Hemmings and Laura Thielen are both exemplary. It's a shame they are running against each other.
I agree.
Let me ask a question that we hear a lot here about long-term care. We hear a lot here about trying to level the playing field, at least educationally, with more early education for preschool kids and so forth, all of which cost money. Fred, have you taken that pledge, that Republican pledge? What's that guy's name now? You can think of his name. That says Nordquist, yes, that you will not, under any circumstances, ever raise a tax.
Yes, but let me tell you the reason why, Dan. It's because I was on the Ways and Means Committee. Not tens of millions, but hundreds of millions of dollars are wasted in the state budget through bad expenditures, through fraud, through misrepresentation of initiative projects. I'll give you one example. The state healthcare system, we have a statewide hospital system. Private doctors wanted to build a hospital on Maui to compete against Maui Memorial, which at the time was getting subsidized at $30 or $40 million a year. They wouldn't allow that to happen. Right now, entitlements, food stamps, and free health care, gold-plated health care, is indexed to earned income, not assets. So someone with $100,000 worth of equity can get free health care while a working couple living in a rented apartment are paying taxes. So there's a huge amount of money that can be cut from the budget and cut taxes, and then we can have a better business environment.
Fred, that, by the way, that's also something I've heard for a lot of years over the time. But whenever we ask exactly what would you cut and exactly how much difference would that make, and the list never gets very specific or very long.
I just gave you two specifics. I would cut the fraud and cheating and change the standards for entitlements where people with large capital assets couldn't collect free food and free medical care. And I'd also have competition for Maui Memorial and other hospitals so we wouldn't have to subsidize Hawaii healthcare systems $100 million a year.
What was the question?
I forgot. But I got one for you, for both of you. What can be done to protect Hawaii from outside influences? I know what it is. Would you raise taxes under any circumstances?
Okay. I do not support raising the GET. I do not support taxing pensions. One of the problems I do have with Hawaii's tax code, though, is we are very regressive. We tax lower income people at a higher proportion of their income than we do upper income people, and I think that's very troublesome. With the GET as our single largest source of revenue, we're taxing people's rent, food, medical expenses. You know, it's really hard on lower income people. And I also don't like the fact that our tax code favors large business over small business. If there were an opportunity in a revenue neutral way to level that playing field, to make the tax code more progressive and to level the playing field for small businesses, I would do that. And I could see in that situation there may be some adjustments where some taxes go down and some go up.
If you go back to the Senate, you would be on every committee practically, or you'd split them down the middle with your colleague, or maybe two or three more colleagues. Where's your passion? What is the committee you would most want to be in? Where you on that you think you are most effective on? You've served on a lot
Ways
of
and Means, by far and away.
No question.
Follow the money, no question. A lot of the foolhardiness of state government begins and ends in the Ways and Means Committee. A lot of the money that's being squandered and fraudulently spent and wasted is being done. And I want to shift the whole conversation from how to raise taxes to how to cut spending so that we can help the little guy. She's right about one thing. Hawaii is very regressive. We tax the poor the most. You get taxed for being sick and hungry in the state of Hawaii. It's shameful. The Tax Foundation came out with a statistic. I think we're second only to Alabama for regressive taxation. And you know, that's something that we should be ashamed of.
And what's your passion?
I agree the money committee is very important. I'd want to be on there. But I think right now what I see the state doing is the political leadership, because Dan Inouye will be retiring sometime over the next 10 years, and that's about 20% of our budget. The political leadership seems bent on developing Hawaii's economy through developing lands and state lands. And so I would want to be on the Land and Water Committee and the Agricultural Committee, because I think it's very important to have a strong voice on those two committees to say that we need to preserve our lands for future generations, and we need to make wise decisions and not sell out for the easy money or the fast money.
What about energy sustainability and also for that food sustainability? How do you have any strong feelings, either of you, on these two subjects?
Absolutely. I think, you know, when we talk about economic development, we export about $12 billion a year between food and energy. And so making a long-term sustained commitment to renewable energy, to the types of incentives to make it work, making a long-term sustained commitment to agriculture, and that means having strong land use laws that make sure our agricultural lands don't go for gentleman estates, don't go for resort vacation rental developments like the legislature was toying with last session, are critical, and that's going to be local jobs and keep money in Hawaii.
Hawaiian Electric is Hawaii's most egregious monopoly. I would like to see it broken up. It's a for-profit monopoly. Our electric rates are 3 times the national average at about 34 cents a kilowatt hour. Hawaiian Electric has not reinvested our money into infrastructure. Our number one asset, our natural beauty, is blighted by telephone poles. I would like to see Hawaiian Electric broken up. It is against everything we believe in a free market to have a for-profit monopoly that's gouging the marketplace. By the way, Dan, we're 93% dependent on fossil fuel, more than we were 20 years ago, because the lack of political leadership to hold Hawaiian Electric's feet to the fire. I'll do that.
I just wanted to say that I think that this word exemplary is a little too much, and it's probably sent in by both of your spouses. I don't know, but those folks in the 25th got a good choice here, and thank you both very, very much
thank you, Laura.
for being with us. And by the way, in just a moment, we're going to watch move on to a competitive race on the House side with Democrat Marilyn Lee and Republican Beth Fukumoto, who are going after a central Oahu district, which includes the communities of Mililani and Waipio. But first, we go to a story that Kalaheo High School students did for Hiki No. You should be interested. It's about an issue important to windward voters in the district Fred and Laura seek to represent: the rapid growth of tourism in once sleepy country towns like Kailua. Here it is.
Residents often say they love living in Kailua because of its small town atmosphere and small town values. But Kailua has changed dramatically over the years. With more big businesses coming into Kailua, the increase in tourism has been impacting this community in various ways. Increased traffic with Pier 1 Imports and Macy's, as well as planned construction of Target and Whole Foods Market, have attracted more and more tourists to this small town. Some wonder whether Kailua will be the next Waikiki on Oahu.
We now see an inundation of tourists and a lot of overnight illegal tourists. And suddenly there are an extra, couple thousand people a day in their communities, competing with, for space on the streets, competing for space in the stores and so forth. So there's resentment growing, definitely.
But some are benefiting from the increase of tourism in Kailua. Island Snow is a local clothing store located right by famous Kailua Beach. In addition to clothing, Island Snow is well known for their tasty shaved ice. The successful small business has benefited from the increase of tourism.
Tourism is huge. I mean, it's one of the main incomes of Hawaii in general, especially being right next to the beach, having the tour buses, because we've advertised in Japan and we have such a huge Japanese clientele that everybody knows who we are. They see the brand and they have to stop. So we get people from everywhere: Germany, Lithuania, Italy, France. We've met people from all over the world for anything from shave ice to a shirt they saw on the website.
Although tourism brings a lot of money into the local economy, many residents don't believe the positives outweigh the negatives.
Well, tourism is good for Kailua in a lot of ways. I have a lot of friends who are business owners, and they feel that it's been wonderful. Some of our restaurants are staying in business that maybe could not have stayed in business before. And a lot of our small shops are able to get a lot of customers. But yet, on the other hand, sometimes when I'm around Kailua on my bike or visiting the beach, I see those tour buses coming through not only Kailua Beach Park, but also in the center of Kailua town. And then you start to feel that the heart of our town is changing, and sometimes, for the worse. There has to be a better balance. I feel that it's a good thing to have them, but it needs to be limited, but I'm not really sure how we would be able to do that.
Whether they help or hurt Kailua, time can only tell. This is Chanel Perez from Colorado High School for Hikino.
We're back with candidates for House District 36, which now includes Mililani Mauka and Waipio acres in central Oahu. Beth Fukumoto is one of the young leaders of Hawaii's Republican Party. She served as interim party chair last year. Before that, she was chief of staff to House Minority Leader Gene Ward and then director of research for the House Minority Caucus. Beth also ran for the House 2 years ago. She was a delegate to the National Republican Convention in Tampa last month, and she takes her Republicanism so seriously. She married the chair of the party, which I think is a little much, but what can I do? Since this is a redrawn district, there's no actual incumbent. However, Marilyn Lee has been serving much of the same area in District 38 since 1996. She is currently vice chair of the Finance Committee and a majority whip. Marilyn was a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy and worked as a registered nurse for 30 years, most of those at Wahiawa General Hospital. She raised 4 children in Mililani and chaired that community's neighborhood board. I understand chairing a neighborhood board nowadays can be risky business. That can get contentious.
Well, we were the first neighborhood board on Oahu, by the way.
Marilyn, how has the redistricted district change? You've had about 2/3 of these people have been your constituents before.
Probably about maybe a little more than 2/3. It's only a very small portion of the district that's really new to me. But I did lose part of the district, actually the area around the Maka'unalau Street and the area around the Rec Center 3, for those of you who are familiar with Mililani.
And Beth, you ran last time in a district that included what part of this district, or none of it? I don't know.
It actually included, the only thing I kept half of a precinct that I actually won in 2010. But it's basically my house and a few other houses.
And a few other houses. But does the redistricting in some way, shape, or form help you, or is it, do you think? Or
I do actually. I mean, I'm sure Marilyn would probably disagree, but I do feel that this district has been going more Republican. We did keep the one precinct from my old district that I did win, and the rest of the precincts, Sean Kawakami did very well in last year.
I've got to ask you, Marilyn, you've been there since 1996. What do you got to do that you haven't done already, or that you feel is still there to be done?
Well, thanks for the question, and I think that would be a question that many people might ask. But if you look at my record, I've been very, very involved in kupuna issues and also in women's issues. The other thing that I've been doing for the last 6 years is working on the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee Vice Chairmanship is a very important position, and basically what happens in the Finance Committee is very important. But regarding kupuna issues, there's so much that's undone. You asked the last guests about long-term care. There's so much to be done in long-term care. I started up a caregiver support group at Wahiawa General Hospital, so I really know how the community is dealing with these issues, and they're not dealing with it very well. There's still a great lack in long-term care. I'd like to take credit for keeping the Women's Caucus alive for the last 16 years in the House. In the House and the Senate. And there are so many issues. Well, we have about 27% of the House and of the legislature are women. There's a lot of issues that we're working on: women's health issues, veterans issues, how we integrate veterans back into the community. I am the only, there are only 3 healthcare professionals in the legislature, and health has become so important in the legislature. So having health professionals there is extremely important. So every year more things come up. This year the hospital sustainability bill came up. I was really instrumental in getting that passed. It's going to mean that our hospitals are going to be able to survive a bit better because they're going to get more money back from the federal government.
You know, most young people I know are really apathetic about politics. What got you interested in politics, and if you're ambitious?
why did you want to be a Republican? Have you counted how many there are?
I have. Yes.
Explain those things to me. Not that obviously I'm sounding like I'm making light of all that, but why does a young person get involved in politics like yourself? Why in Republican politics? What draws you to the Republicans?
So many people my age, I graduated in 2008 from Georgetown with a master's degree and couldn't find a job. Because it was the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. So I moved back to Hawaii and I started working at the legislature during session because we have session jobs open there. And that's what got me interested. I mean, I was in DC at Georgetown and not participating. But when I got there and I saw what was going on at the legislature and I saw a lot of dishonesty and a lot of lack of transparency, and I figured that's why a lot of people my age aren't getting involved, and I wanted to change that. I felt like the Republican Party was the best place to do that. I'm always one to join up with the underdog, and I do think that we do need a balance of power to make sure that the right ideas get out and that everybody has a voice. Right now, a lot of our state who is voting Republican don't have a lot of don't have much of a voice in the legislature, and I think we need more.
What did you study at Georgetown?
I studied English.
Oh, you're like me, worthless.
Yeah. And I studied American Studies, actually, also. At UH.
We really are a lot alike, aren't we? This is well, maybe you can be a moderator someday.
There you go.
Know, in
That's
your
my dream.
In your old age, a moderator. I don't know. Someone writes in, and I think it's an a question that I've seen a lot of Beth Fukumoto's flyers out there in Mililani, a lot of rhetoric, but what can Beth do that Marilyn Lee is not already doing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the thing is that we need to start protecting our community. One of the things that came up this year, there were a lot of exemption bills to just wholesalely exempt certain projects, certain developments from environmental assessments and other things. Now, one is involved in those environmental assessments are things like traffic studies, noise studies. There are instances of EIS is finding out that the planes coming over, flying over communities are shaking the windows. Stuff like that could happen if we just start exempting projects from bills, exempting projects from permits. And that's what I was afraid of, seeing things like that, thinking, you know what, we need to make sure that we're stopping these and we're being vigilant. Things like the school bus route cuts this year. A lot of things have happened this year. The pension tax, our seniors were almost taxed above what they were able to pay. And I think those things are also going on at the legislature. Marilyn Lee's doing a lot of good, for sure, and she deserves a lot of credit for that. But there are a lot of things that I think don't represent the community anymore and don't represent the community's opinions, and I think we might need a change in leadership.
How do you respond to that?
Well, regarding the exemption bills, I think it's important to remember that none of the exemption bills passed except for the exemption for bridges. The exemption for bridges was real important because the exemption applied to the bridge over Kipapa Gulch, Theodore Roosevelt Bridge. It will be rehabilitated. I'm sure everyone in Mililani thinks that's really important. Mm-hmm. And in terms of my position on environmental issues, I think it's important also to mention that I voted against one of the most egregious of the exemption bills, 755, and the Sierra Club did endorse me. Regarding the school bus issue, I think, absolutely, that was a terrible situation that happened when the DOE announced the school bus cuts with about a week's notice to the parents. You've seen the audit that came out, and it's really very critical of the DOE. But the day of the announcement of the cuts, because of the intervention that both Senator Kidani and myself made, the DOE was replaced some of the school bus routes in Mililani. And so we did not lose as much as we might have without our intervention.
Whenever I talk to anybody from Mililani, I'm always bothered by the educational situation up there, where your kids are going. The kids I think in all of the Mililani schools, aren't they? Elementary schools are going a staggered kind of thing. They go 6 weeks and then they're off 6. I don't quite understand that.
Not every school.
Not every school. Only the middle school. The middle school was originally built as a multi-track school. All the other schools are on the regular school calendar. Actually, as the population goes down, there is a chance that the middle school will go to a regular calendar in the coming years.
But are you comfortable with that? Did you go? You didn't go to middle school in Mililani?
No, I did not. I would have gone to Wheeler, actually.
But are you satisfied with a multi-track system?
You know, I think it makes it difficult on families. My sister did go through it. She actually went through it the first year it was implemented. And it did make it difficult because we never had the same break system. And it would have been helpful for our families to have it all on one track. So I think it's a good idea if we start shifting towards that.
Did she feel that she was shortchanged in terms of her education, or did your parents feel that she was?
No, not that she was shortchanged in terms of her education. It was more the socialization, her friends. You know, for elementary school, she never saw them because they were on different tracks. Yeah, that was a big thing for her. She didn't feel like she was actually shortchanged. In some ways, it's nice to be able to not take a huge summer break and to take small breaks. Most education philosophers and theorists would tell you that that might actually be a better thing, but.
And the middle school is actually one of the top schools in the state, really, our Mililani Middle School. And you just saw them on Hiki No just a short while ago. Children at the middle school are doing very well. It would be really probably very good thing for us to go to a regular school year. And as I said, with the population declining, we probably will move to that in not many years.
You politicians are such drum beaters for your communities. I tell you, it's sickening. What is your view of the potential development of Coral Ridge? How will it impact your area?
No, I think first of all, again, on the exemption issue, my biggest concern has been, you know, if things like Coral Ridge go through and our representatives are going to be voting for things that are going to exempt public hearings and exempt traffic studies, that's going to be a huge problem for Mililani especially. I think that unless we're sure, and I know a lot of work has been done in that area to make sure that traffic won't hurt us, but traffic's already hurting us. It's going to just make it worse. So I am concerned about Coral Ridge.
I think the community in general is concerned about the traffic impacts, and you know, it really is difficult to be commuting and taking an hour and a half to come home each day. However, it's going to provide a lot of jobs for the people in our community, and so some people are very much in favor of it. It's another planned community like Mililani, and I have to say that Mililani is a wonderful place to live. It's been planned very well.
Kind of had a little bit. That's a little bit too much. How many houses are there? Are they talking about?
I think eventually, when if the whole development is done, it's something like 20,000. But I think only a partial part of that has been approved. I think the thing now to look into is, you know, how can we change things like Paiva Drive extension. How can we work on improvements that are going to cut down on the traffic congestion? I think the development itself has been improved, but, you know, and basically we can't really change that. The Land Use Commission has made their decision, but how can we improve things so that traffic congestion is not going to get worse? And I have to say right here that, you know, I'm a fan, a supporter of transit, and I think eventually that transit will be helpful in getting rid of some of the traffic congestion, although we will have more cars on the road later.
Where are you on transit?
I actually voted for rail when it was up on the ballot, like a lot of other people. I'm a little concerned that it's not going to UH. I think that's the major traffic problem that we have in Mililani. That's what I'm hearing the most when I go door to door, so I think it needs to go to UH.
What's your vision of the district? Someone wants to know. How do you think that Mililani and the areas that you represent up there might represent up there? How do they fit into your vision of Honolulu, or their place in Honolulu, I should say? I
think that Mililani actually is obviously it's one of the best communities, and because it's a planned community, I think that we need to do a master plan. The city and county does have somewhat of a master plan, but we're not really following it. I think Mililani could be a good model for developing the rest of Oahu, and the rest of any new development should look at what Mililani is doing, especially that it's such a walkable community. It's very easy, especially in Mililani Mauka, for me to just walk down the street to Long's to get stuff, and I think that we need to do that in other areas too.
Tell me your feelings about taxes, because I've always been interested in Grover Nordquist's asking Republicans to sign their pledge. Did you sign your pledge?
I'm not that black and white. I do not think that we should wholesalely just throw anything out the window right up front. I'm not in office. You never know what kinds of things might need to be increased, because maybe they haven't been increased in the last 50 years. And maybe there are certain people, like this year, the elevator, and boiler safety inspectors said, please just increase it so that we can get things moving faster. Okay, fine. But had I signed that pledge, then I wouldn't be able to vote for that. So no, I didn't sign the pledge.
Yeah, the state budget and the whole problems that we faced with the state budget, whether it was under, particularly since 2008, whether it was Governor Lingle was in office or Governor Abercrombie, we're facing it every year. How are we going to do it? Are we going to raise the excise tax? What are we going to cut? We've cut some things already. Where do we go? What would you do as a legislator?
Well, I wouldn't raise the excise tax. I'll say that up front. I also don't think we should raise things like the pension tax, on which my opponent did vote for, because I do think that we've made certain promises to seniors that we shouldn't be breaking. We might want to look in the future. Maybe we need to look at the pension tax for people that haven't started working yet so that they can plan ahead, but you can't change things on people after they're retired.
You voted for the pension tax?
Well, again, the pension tax was a proposal of the governor. It came down to the legislature and the bill was heard. The proposal that the House actually put forward was taxation of people at a very high level, over $200,000. We heard the people's voice. The bill did not pass, and I doubt very much it'll come back again. Related to the general excise tax, I've always been against raising the general excise tax. In fact, I've been one of the strongest voices against raising the general excise tax. But what we need to do is decide what is core, what is important to support. I will say that just this week, or maybe last week, the Tax Review Commission came out with a consultant's report that suggested that we raise just about every tax that exists. Mm-hmm. I was one of the 28 people who submitted testimony against the consultant's report. I know it is difficult because there are very many needs in our state, just like I said with long-term care. But we need to look at some of the exemptions. For instance, one of the concerns that has come up is the money that we're paying in terms of exemptions for solar, for the PVCs. Right. Yeah, mm-hmm. The Council on Revenue is actually downsized their projections because of the uncertainty about the amount of money that we're spending there. So, I think it's going to be a matter of looking at, where we are spending money that we don't need to be spending, and what the core needs of the state are.
Yeah, except, of course, people were very supportive of alternative energy and getting off we have that very high price of gasoline and oil products and so on.
Well, absolutely. I think there is a middle ground, and that's one of my opponent's favorite.
Beth, how do you feel about being in a party that doesn't believe in equal pay for women, like Mitch McConnell? Walt from Mililani wants to know that. Women aren't doing very well, the Republicans, nationally at least, are not doing very well with the women's vote.
Correct.
Yeah. How do you feel about that as a young woman?
Well, I do think there are a lot of different opinions within a party, as Laura Thielen said very much earlier in your show. There are a lot of different opinions within the party. I do think that women have come a long way, but there are still a lot of women's rights that we need to pay attention to, and I do think women deserve equal pay. Yeah.
So you are not comfortable with these kinds of statements by people like McConnell, or?
No, I'm not. And as one of the highest agency directors in the state capitol, I'm director of research. I have a very high title. I've gotten very far as a woman, and I think every woman deserves that right. Yeah.
Marilyn, someone wants to know, somebody from Hilo, why did you avoid the naturalization question when it came to redistricting? Do you understand that question?
No.
I don't either.
I think maybe that he's thinking of some sort of federal question, but I'm not. I don't know what that's about.
I don't get it either. Some have argued that one of the major state issues that we should think about is food security. That so much of what we get is imported. What can we on the state level do, on a state legislative level, to try to deal with that problem or to try to advance food security?
Well, I think one of the things is we want to make sure that I personally feel it's controversial, but I personally feel the solar tax credits need to stay in place at least for a little while longer because it's going to help us develop our renewable energy here. I think that's one of the biggest places that we can have a lot of job growth and economic development. It's a way to diversify our economy. So that's one of the big things that I think is going to come up this session, and that's how I would vote.
Yeah, and in terms of food security, I think we have to really be very concerned about using all our agricultural lands, and they are rapidly disappearing. So that area between Wahiawa and the North Shore is a very critical area to keep. I think that people need to start, developing their home gardens, looking at how the community can have community gardens. We've got a community garden across from Wheeler Air Force Base that many people are involved in, but it's really, if we have a storm that cuts us off from the mainland, what are we going to do? I interviewed someone this year who was talking about what we do with getting ready for disasters, and all of us have to look at having a 7-day supply of food in the house and a 7-day supply of water.
The way I eat, we'll never have a 7-day supply. Well, if you get elected, what committee do you want to be on?
Finance.
Finance, no question. Both of you are finance folks. We're out of time. I'm sorry. I could talk to you guys for a long time. Thanks very much for coming, Marilyn. Thank you very much, Beth.
It was
Again,
a pleasure.
Another district with a terrific choice. Next week, we continue our general election coverage with 2 legislative races, one for the State House of Representatives, the other for a Leeward City Council seat. We'll talk with Democrat Scott Saiki and Republican Tiffany Au, running for House District 26 in downtown Honolulu. And we'll look at the runoff council race between Kimberly Pine and Tom Berg. They topped a field of 5 candidates in the primary for Honolulu City Council District 1. That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Dan Boylan. Ahui ho.